In this week's show, Jim Gaines talks about his career as an engineer and producer. I'm Mitch McCracken, and this is Memphis Music Interview. Jim will be talking about working with Stevie Ray Vaughan, Santana, Huey Lewis and the News, and Journey, among others. Welcome to the show, Jim. The first question I want to ask you is, although I know that you engineered and produced Huey Lewis and the News Soulville, you were also involved in their early career, weren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I actually recorded the demos that got them their record deal. And then there was a record that came out. What happened was I did three artists, and they were one of them. And the record came in the night we finished the demos. We want to do it with Jim Gaines right here at this studio. It was at the Automat in San Francisco. And we're going to do this. So about 2 or 3 months later, they're in L.A. working with Bill Schnee. Now, that record came out. Nobody even knows it came out because it didn't sell anything. So what happened was I lost like 3 of these projects like this because of politics. And I just packed up and moved to Oregon and retired from the business for 2 years.
Oh, really?
I bought a couple of businesses up there, and so when they got ready to do the next record, the band had made a deal with the record company. They had gone through like 6 producer engineers, and so Huey calls me and said, "Look, man, you have to come back and record this band. You're the only guy who understands this band," because I was there in the very beginning. And so we worked out a deal, and I lived in Oregon at that point in time. And so I'll go down and we record Picture This. And because of Huey was actually in with a one-truck yogurt business, and I had a windshield repair business. So anyway, I recorded that record, and we had a top 10 single with Do You Believe in Love? And because of Huey, I got back in the business. It was nonstop action after that. I started out in Memphis at Pepper Tanner Studios, which became Pepper Tanner Company of doing radio commercials.
Right.
And I started out as a gopher there, ended up being studio manager there. So I was with them about 8 or 9 years. No, I never was involved with Arden before I left Memphis. I left Memphis in 1970. I went to work from the Jingle Company as chief engineer of Steve Cropper's studio, Trans Maximus.
Oh,
but
yeah.
While I was still working for the Jingle Company, I worked at Stax part-time at night. Cropper wanted me to come over there and help out at night. So when I got off my day job, I'd go to Stax at night and do some work over there. And I was just like the young kid at that point in time. I did whatever they needed to do. I basically started in the library and just helped out whatever needed to be helped.
Right. Now when at what point did you work with TMI? I mean, was that when they were first starting out, or?
Yeah, what happened was when Cropper opened that studio, he signed an exclusive deal with Epic Records, or Clive Davis, basically CBS Epic, to produce their artists, and they in turn gave him some money to fund his production company and a studio. So he opened up that studio. It used to be a small art theater at one point in time. And what happened was that, and I'm not totally clear on this, but he was supposed to hire a New York engineer to come in down from New York to Memphis to work for him. And somehow that had not worked out. And he was kind of, the studio was open but not really doing anything in business. And what happened was that I got this call one evening, and from him saying, "Look, we got a project that's just walked in the door. Denny Cordell just brought this band in, and part of it was part of the Rhinoceros band, and he's been working in Memphis at another studio. They just erased all his tapes, and he's not happy. So can you come over and work with us at night after your day job?" So I did. So, and I go work like 9 to 5 at the Jingle Company, and then 6 to God knows, almost daylight. And So we got those tracks cut for Denny Cordell and did a few overdubs, and then he took the project somewhere else. But after that, Crawford made me an offer and said, look, would you come and be my chief engineer? This other thing in New York's not working out. And, you know, I was at the jingle company. I was a young executive. I had a company car, I had stock in a company, and, you know, I ran 3 studios in Memphis and 1 in Dallas, Texas, and had a crew of 7 people. And so I said, well, I guess. So we kind of worked it out. We worked it out. I was there about a year and a half. In the meantime, Wally Hyder from San Francisco had been trying to recruit me to come to California for 3 years, and he just caught me at the right time, and I flew out there and took that job. So I left Memphis in 1970 to go to work for him. Now, the guy that took my place when I left was Ronnie Capone, who was my mentor at that point in time. Uh-huh. He had left the jingle company, gone to Stax, and then Cropper hired him to come over. And the reason I know this is because when Tower Power went into cut in Memphis, Cropper could not be the official producer because they were a Warner Brothers act. So Ronnie Capone was the quote-unquote official producer.
Oh, okay.
So I know Clive Davis had this. There was a contract between Cropper and Clive Davis for sure.
Right.
It was my understanding, Mitch, that actually the money came from Epic. That Epic gave them $500,000 or close to it to get that studio in operation, fund a rhythm section,
right,
and to work up and sign acts to TMI with distribution through Epic. That was the way I remember it.
Right, because that's who Poco was with, and that's who Jeff Beck was with.
Yeah, I did the Poco record.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, that was one of the first projects that we did.
From the Inside, I think is one of the best Poco albums they ever did.
Now, I'm going to give you a little funny story on that one.
Okay.
Since this was Epic money, Epic situation, which is CBS.
Right.
So what happened was that Poco came in, and we were told that the Nashville Union Engineers had to come down and cut Poco because they were an official CBS act.
Right.
So Gary Williams said, well, they come in 2 days early, so here they come in early. So we record a couple of songs. We get sounds up and get recorded. Me, and as an engineer. Mm-hmm. So what happened was the engineers show up. It was Charlie Bragg and Owen Bradley's brother. I can't think it was his name. He was the tape operator. You have to have 2 because in those days you had to have an official guy who started to record for the tape machine and the engineer. Mm-hmm. So what happened was they got there and they found out that we had recorded 2 songs, and threatened to cut the tape off. And so it was some heavy negotiations going on, because the way it was explained to me is like, these guys are coming down, they're going to stay in the hotel, don't worry, Jim, you're going to be cutting the record. No. So when they show up, this is how it worked. We would get sounds. I would get sounds, and ready to roll, I would slide out of the mixer position over to the other side of Cropper. Charlie Bragg would slide in my spot, put his hands on the board, and roll tape. So, if somewhere along the way Cropper said, what do you think? I said, I think we need to stop and work on so-and-so. Okay, stop. I go out, work on the sounds. As soon as I get the sound, Charlie's back in my spot. So he had to officially be sitting at the board whenever they roll tape.
Wow.
And that's how we cut Poco.
Whoa. So do you remember what songs you cut first?
Oh, God, man, that's like 30 years ago.
Okay.
35 years ago. Lord, no, I can't remember the songs on the record.
Yeah, God, they would. Poco was one of my favorite groups.
And that's when they had, Messina had just left. Richie's still in the band. Messina left. I think Paul Cotton, the guitar player.
Yeah,
I think Paul Cotton was guitar player, and Richie, and George,
right,
and Rusty, and that was the band. But Messina had just left.
Yeah, but Tim Schmidt was with them, right?
I mean, Timmy Schmidt was playing bass. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that was Bad Weather and the title track. I just loved it.
So what record was it from the inside have been? The second or third?
I'm not sure, but I think it was probably either the third or the fourth.
Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, they were established band whenever we got them, so.
Right. Oh yeah, they were. But that was yeah, that was such a great album, though, man. You did a great job on it.
Oh, I love that band. Gosh, those guys were so good. I mean, Rusty. I mean, that steel guitar sound he got within Leslie's and everything. Wow. George comes in with his drums, takes them out, puts them in the middle of the floor of the studio, and takes every piece of hardware off and cleans it and puts it back on before we start work. And, and he was a powerful drummer. Gosh, he was like deadly.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, Timmy Smith, what can you say about him? I mean, he's like the voice in bass playing. I mean, I saw him later when he was with the Eagles. When I was at Steve Miller was on the road with them, and ran into him when he joined the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Timmy, hey man, it's Jim Gaines from Polk. Oh, dude, Memphis boy, yeah. He's a cool guy.
I just interviewed Jeff Powell.
He used to be my assistant. He was answering the phone at Kiva when I moved back to Memphis.
He told me about that, but he was telling me about some things that he did while he did an album on an artist named Corey Brannon, and he was telling me about some of the things, how he manipulated the equipment. But I remember the last time I talked to you, you were telling me a story about something that you did I think it was when you were in San Francisco, to manipulate the speakers were under the board or something. Do you remember that? Do you remember talking about that?
Well, I mean, I was a renegade engineer, man. I've done a lot of things to manipulate everything. So
yeah.
I can't remember what in particular. With Steve Miller, we did vocals in the control room, which was unheard of.
Uh-huh.
Fly Like an Eagle and Book of Dreams, and we did his guitar parts. I put the amp at my feet underneath the console, if that's what you're talking about.
So you've done a lot of music outside of Memphis, in addition to what you've done in Memphis. And
Memphis was, I mean, I didn't really do any music in Memphis. I did jingles in Memphis. I only did work for Cropper for about a year, maybe a little bit more, and I arrived in San Francisco in 1970, and I mean, not knowing if I'm going to fall flat on my face or not, because I took Russ Gary's place, who used to do Creedence.
Uh-huh.
When he left, when Fantasy hired him to go over there, they built Creedence their own studio, and they hired Russ to go over there and work for Fantasy full time. He was the engineer at Hyder's, where Creedence cut a lot of the early stuff.
Mm-hmm. So
when Russ left, they recruited me to come out and take his place. And that's how I ended up in San Francisco.
Wow. And how long were you there?
20 years, off and on, from 70 to 89.
So what are some of your favorite records that you did?
Oh, man, I've done so many. I mean, some of my special ones is Fly Like an Eagle, Book of Dreams with Miller, and the Huey Lewis things, Tower Power. It's really funny, whenever Tower Power got ready to do their next record, they said, well, why should we go to Memphis when we have Memphis in San Francisco? They called me Memphis Slim at that point in time. So I did the next 3 or 4 Tower Power records.
Uh-huh.
Another special record I thought was kind of cool was the Spinners, Happiness with the Spinners. Of course, Stevie Ray's Instep record, that's special.
And how did you end up coming back to Memphis?
Well, what happened was I got this phone call from a Canadian group, and they wanted to record in Memphis. They were Brothers Act, and they wanted to come to Memphis. They brought 1 or 2 of their players with them, and we researched the studios, and they had found this studio called Kiva. I don't even think I negotiated the deal, and Kiva had just been opened, I think, and. Because I suggested Arden, but I think they negotiated it. So I flew in, and we recorded this band there. And, of course, I worked in Kiva.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to San Francisco. So when I got ready to do Stevie Ray, the original recording place was New York. So we went to New York. We were there about 4 or 5 days. First we rehearsed there. And then we went to Power Station, which is the big-ass studio there.
Uh-huh.
Paying $3,000 a day for this place. And the room they put us in was too small. We were recording 10 amplifiers at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to get 10 amplifiers even into a room and then you turn them on, you better have a big room. Well, they didn't. They had us in a small dead room. So Stevie said, "Look, I don't know. I mean, we had this place booked for 6 weeks." And he said, "What do you think?" And we had checked out a couple of studios before we got there. We checked out Butch Truck Studio in Tallahassee, a brand new studio nobody even worked at. He said, and the reason he wanted to be in New York is because his girlfriend, Jana, was there. After a few days, 2 or 3 days, I said, "Steve, this is not going to work, man. This room isn't big enough, and we need to rethink this." And I said, "I'll tell you what, I worked in this studio in Memphis that might work, and I'll bet you they give us a really good rate, and we can get hotel rate. We stayed at the Peabody for less than $50 a day. The people, they are the same family."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Let's go try it. If this doesn't work, let's go to Los Angeles." Okay. So we came down to Kiva, and we had 3 or 4. They gave us 3 or 4 days just to test things out. So we did, and the band loves Memphis anyway. And so when Gary Bell said, "Look, I'll do anything to keep you guys here," so I ended up renting the whole building, so I wouldn't have anybody else in the building, which is 2 studios, and I turned one studio into amp repair and Guitar World, and ended up using the studio part for part of these amps. So we cut Instep there.
So how long did it take you to record Instep?
We were there for about a month, maybe 5 weeks. And then when we got down to doing vocals, we ended up going to Los Angeles and doing vocals, and then to do the mix in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, were you involved with the Vaughan Brothers when they recorded Family Style?
No, when Family Style was done, what happened was when I first met Stevie, Jimmy and Stevie were barely talking, and
oh, really?
So, and you got to remember that Stevie was in the band were going through the STEP program. In the STEP program, you're supposed to make amends with the past, look behind you, and look forward. So the Family Style record was "Let's Be Brothers Again."
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't use either one of their bands. None of Stevie's people, none of Jimmy's people were on that record. They got, what's his name from New York to produce it? Niles Rogers to produce it. Somebody totally away from Texas as well. And they used Anton to play drums. And I can't remember, they did a lot of it in Memphis, but they also did some in New York. And so that's what Family Style was about, is so the brothers can get back together and be brothers again.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to some of the songs, that's what they're talking about.
Right, right. And then that was the last thing that Stevie recorded.
Yes.
Wow. Man, that's sad.
I did the last, Double Trouble record, Stevie and Double Trouble record, but that record was the last thing he recorded.
Oh, wow.
And I was right. I was supposed to be at the show that night. That I was working in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and they were doing the shows in Alpine Valley. There were 2 nights there.
Right.
And I was at this crazy Australian guy. I was up there at the studio called Roy Recording, and it's on the end of what used to be the old Playboy club, but it was a hotel at that time owned by American Hotel things.
Mm-hmm.
So, matter of fact, Robert Cray's band was staying there, and so I was supposed to be the first night I couldn't go because it was in the studio. So the second night I was going to go, but Carlos Santana called me, and he said, "Can you come to the World Theater down in Chicago? We're doing a live radio broadcast. Can you come down and mix it?" I said, "Okay."
Wow.
I figured we had to get time to go back to see Stevie. Well, it's way a long ways away. So I went back to the hotel, and about 7 in the morning, I got a phone call from Chris saying Stevie's helicopter has not showed up. We don't know where he is. We don't know what's going on. They were right behind us, but they never showed up. They all took Clapton's helicopters back to Midway, and so he could get back to the hotel and call John. So, and then later that morning, about 8:30 or 9, Chris called me back. You know, Chris is the drummer, and he said, "Well, they found the helicopter and they're all dead."
Oh, wow.
They flew right directly into the side of the mountain, and it was probably maybe an hour away from where I was working.
Wow. Man, what a tragedy that
So
was.
I was supposed to be at that show. Didn't make it. Didn't get to see him. It was weird. And here I am trying to record this crazy son of a bitch from Australia and having problems getting vocals, and it's like somebody punched me in the stomach.
Yeah.
For like 2 days, I almost felt like I couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can this be? This is not right. I mean, how can this possibly be? Because Stevie and I talked about possibly doing another record together. And,
Right.
But, like, wow.
Yeah.
Because that record I did was the most successful record they ever had. And he won a Grammy, and
Right in step.
yeah, it
Wow.
won a Grammy, and it was like a top 20 single, and it was huge
Right.
for them. I mean, we had a radio hit, and you got to remember, Mitch, man, when I got that record, I was the first guy to work with those guys outside of the Texas crews.
Mm-hmm.
All the other records have been done in Austin or Dallas with Richard or some of the other guys. You know, I was the first outsider to work with him.
Wow.
So it got a little tense because
Yeah.
I was the first guy to say, no, not good enough.
Good for you.
So it got a little tense every once in a while, but we made it through it, and it was a big success, and they were all happy when it was all said and done.
Yeah. Well, now wasn't the bitterness between the two brothers? Weren't they in a band together when they were younger, and Stevie kind of stole the thunder?
Well, you got to remember, you know, Jimmy was the older brother. He was the successful one.
Uh-huh.
Stevie was like the young kid, just like an annoying, really the young brother.
Uh-huh.
You know? And then Stevie has this all of a sudden little success with doing that thing with David Bowie. You know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, that's what got him signed. And then all of a sudden they got this Texas bar band having a little bit of success. They sold 100,000 records or so, and but they got a lot of that cult kind of thing going.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Jimmy and his band are kind of breaking up a little bit at that point in time. You know, like, I don't know if Jimmy and me had left the band left the Thunderbirds by that time.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to do his own. So anyway, Stevie's having this success, and Jimmy's going the other way, down. So
Right.
it was kind of tense, you know, and plus,
Right.
you know, I can't say exactly what I was told, but there's a lot of tension between those two. There was a lot of tension in the family even at one point in time. So he was very close to his mom.
Mm-hmm.
His dad, not so much, but, you know, there's a lot of tense things going on in Austin because of competitiveness.
Right.
Here's
Right.
my younger brother, you know, becoming this hotshot player, playing on David Bowie's big dance hit, blah, 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 so and so. A lot of tension going on. And you know, I'm not saying how bad it was, but Steve and I had a talk one night, and I got let in on some of the inside stuff. And stuff I really didn't even want to be privileged to, because it's really some deep stuff. But he did.
Yeah, yeah. But if I remember correctly, about the same time that Bowie was asking him to go on tour, Jackson Browne offered him some free studio time as well. So he was.
I don't know. I don't know if he actually went on tour with Bowie or not.
No, he
I don't
didn't.
think he did.
No, he didn't. He was
played
asked
some
to.
shows. I think he played a few shows with him
Right.
somewhere, like in New York or someplace.
Yeah, yeah.
But
No, he turned.
I don't think.
Yeah, he turned Bowie down on doing the tour, but he had Bowie looking at him. He had Jackson Browne offered him free studio time, and you know, he was the toast of the town at the time.
Yeah, he was high gun.
Yeah, yeah. So that was, Man, he was great too. I really liked some of the slower things that he did, like Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. I thought that was a great song. And then there was Riviera Paradise. Yeah, that was great. That was a great song.
Yeah, we did that in one take.
Did you really?
I'll tell you this quick story. A lot of the writers they know this story or heard about it. What happened with Riviera Paradise is, first we get to New York and rehearsal, and he said, "Well, I got this one more little instrumental ditty. Since we're playing it right now, we play it some. We'll just record it. There's no sense rehearsing it." We get to Memphis, and we don't record it till like we've been there a couple of weeks. And it's one of those things where you start playing at 1 or 2 in the morning when the lights. So we have all the lights down, and I've got a piece of a reel of tape on, and I asked him, I said, "Well, how long is it?" He said, "Oh, it's probably about 4 minutes long." And I think I had like 7 or 8 minutes of tape left on the end of the reel. I'm thinking, okay. So they're all lights down, and everybody's kind of in that mood, and bam, we start cutting it. It's like, wow, this is going great. And I look over at my tape counter, and I'm getting very close to the end. Instead of 4 minutes, it's 7 minutes.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so I run around the control room like a chicken with a head cut off, trying to get somebody's attention. Stevie's got his back to me, leaning down.
Uh-huh.
Chris is out there. He catches me, and I gave him a cut sign to kind of saying the tape is going to run out, cut. And he just nodded, and Stevie kind of looked up at him, and Chris gave him the cut sign. And I swear to you, man, the last note hit, and went, wow.
What?
Yeah, that story's been told many times. A lot. Every European writer knows about it. I have to go over and tell them again. So now I'm telling you. So I mean, it's not just one. It's,
right.
They're like your babies. Of course, Supernatural was a special record. I only did pieces and parts of that, but Carlos and I've been working together. We'd worked since '79 together, off and on. But sometimes not, depending on the situation. I did a Journey record. That was special. That took a year. Me and Steve Perry were like best buddies for a year.
Uh-huh.
I did the Raised on Radio record, and which was a Get Back Together record, and Steve and I became very close friends. Matter of fact, I just talked to him about 6 months ago. He called me out of the clear blue. He said, "Oh man, I just want to call you and say hi." And
wow.
But we were like best buds. At that point in time, he had done Oh Sherry and on his own and had a big selling record. And he had basically told the band, "I'm not sure I'm coming back because I have all the money this way." So I did the record of them getting back together, and it was a mess. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to say it's a mess. I'm just going to say it was a little tense.
They had different lead singers, but they always tried to find somebody who sounded so much like Steve Perry.
Oh, well, they went through several. There was another kid named Eric that lived in San Francisco that they used for a while, and he, it doesn't. None of them looked like Steve, and none of them really sound like Steve. This kid they have now is Filipino, I understand, and I haven't seen him. Mm-hmm. But I did run into Neil and Sean literally the month after they hired him in Texas, and they were telling me that this guy is really, really good. I think Neil saw him on a YouTube thing one time, and so they checked him out. But I don't know. Maybe one day Perry will go back. I doubt it, but there was a lot of tension when I left.
Yeah.
A lot of tension.
Yeah. I remember playing Journey before Steve joined the group, and once he joined the group and they started doing his songs and with his voice, I mean, it was a completely different band.
Well, here's the deal. See, I worked on some of the original Journey demos. They weren't Journey at that point in time. They're called Black Gold. And what happened was that Greg Raleigh, who left, Greg and Neil Sean left Santana at the same time and started this band,
right? Which
became Journey. And they had Angel playing drums, and they were more like a fusion band. And of course, Greg sang because he was the lead singer of Santana when he was there.
Right.
And then when Greg left, they got Steve. Now, Steve is a former drummer. A lot of people don't know that, but he was a drummer at one point in time. And And his favorite person of all time is Sam Cooke. You just listen to him, you can hear all them phrases. That's, matter of fact, we're out here where we live. I ran into a guy who owned the radio station. They put that photograph for that album in some little place outside of Modesto. But yeah, it was what happened was when Steve came in, he wrote these great lyrics with great melodies, and then they brought Jonathan Cain in first, then they brought Steve Perry in. And when Steve and Jonathan's a great chord guy. He's one of those, you can just find these chords. And if you really listen to Journey's record, they're not structured like a normal rock thing. They don't go verse, chorus, blah, 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 blah. It goes maybe verse, bridge, maybe chorus. It's the whole flow is a little differently, set up a little differently, and but that's how he feels it. So when I met them guys, see, I was like one of the top engineers in San Francisco for years and years, and even when I left, I was on top, but I just walked away from it. But so when they called me to do this, because Kevin Elson had been doing it, who did their sound. I can't think of one other guy did it. I think Keith did one record from LA. But anyway, I was brought in because I had all these Huey Lewis hits behind me, and stuff like that going on. And so I was brought in as an engineer, co-producer with Steve. That's how it worked. So we did some stuff at the Plant Studios, and Jonathan Cain had a little studio at his house. We built there and do keyboards up there, and we do some things up there, and guitars up there. And so that was a very interesting record. It took us a year to do the record often, but we didn't work every day. We took time off. Matter of fact, I started a Bruce Hornsby record with Huey Lewis, and I was supposed to finish producing it, but I couldn't get away from Journey. I was in the middle of that record when the record plant owner got busted for, he was the chemist in a meth lab.
Oh, no.
The plant was just he had like 5 businesses as he was laundering money through. So I came in one day, and the DEA and all the drug 8 people meet me at the front door and say, Mr. Gaines, we'd like to talk to you. I'm writing all those Journey records. I got all the gear set up and everything, and I had 3 acts going on at that point in time, so they closed the studio down. And of course, we had to move locations, and I had to, just take my stuff and go.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we were on national TV.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was closed for a year.
Well, so did they suspect you of doing anything, or?
No, they never. Any of the employees, none of the employees were ever looked at. It's him. The only thing they thought is some of the meth may have been cooked there. So they tore that studio apart looking for anything. And thank God, the crew guys didn't have any pot in their little cases or nothing. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything. I think they were pissed off because they couldn't find anything. But all that stuff was going on way up toward the Tahoe area. He had a farm up there. That's where it was going on. And and I suspected it, but it was one of those things that I didn't see him that often. Just we were doing business, so I mean, I was kind of running the studio. The only time I'd see him was when he'd show up and want to redesign something. He was the design guy, and he wants to change the color of this or blah 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 that. And other than that, we kind of stayed out of each other's hair because I was working in the studio and running the place.
Right.
Anyway, he had a big farm. He had a big ranch, quote unquote, up there. That's where they were cooking it.
Well, oh, wow. Yeah. So that was on the California side going towards Sacramento.
Oh, yeah. No, he was in California. I mean, here's the thing. When the DEA agent interviewed me that day, I was only interviewed once. It's amazing. I actually worked for the Marshal Service at one point in time. They were the guys who paid the bills at the studio. They owned the studio. But the DEA agent, I'm pretty sure they had tapped my phone, because they brought up conversations between me and him. There was no one there except us, and some stuff I think from my house. So I suspect that, but the thing is, they were just kind of questioning me, like, where is this stuff being done? Who's involved? I didn't know any of that stuff. I said, no, I don't know that. All I can tell you is I make records all day long. And, so after the initial interview, everything calmed down for all employees, and they just shut the studio down. We had no jobs.
But all these groups that you're talking about that you worked with in San Francisco were known for like a San Francisco sound.
Well, when I got there, remember, I'm a hillbilly from Arkansas, so when I got there, it was such a culture shock for me, because in San Francisco there were, you had the Grateful Dead, you had Quicksilver, you had Tower Power, you had Sons of Champlin, I recorded a record with Dan Hicks and the Hot Legs, which is, so I mean, it was just everything. You had the kind of hippie country stuff going on. You had the hippie music going. Starship. I mean, good Lord, that's a whole different concept. But I got to be involved. I did Burr & Shipley's 2 or 3 of their records, and they're Kansas City boys. I mean, I was doing. Mitch, it was kind of funny. See, when I got out there, one of the reasons Wally hired me is because I was running the studios here in Memphis. Two different studios. And so I was being brought out there for 2 reasons. One is an engineer, and another to take the studio manager's place, who was going to retire in 2 years. His name was Mel Tanner. And he wanted me to be there and, kind of make a transition into management. But what happened was, I was making so much money for the studio, billing studio time, I couldn't get out of didn't make any economical sense for me to do a management job.
Right.
Get a straight salary, because I was making more money than I would have as a manager. So it was the best move I made in my life. I just happened to, and for 2 years he tried to get me to come out there. First I'm going to come to L.A., and I said, no, don't want any part of it. So when Russ left, they flew me out to San Francisco, and of course San Francisco's a beautiful city. You get out there on one of them beautiful days, and the weather's right. And they drove me over to Marin County and showed me what suburbia looked like, because there's no way I can live downtown. But and then they asked me what I wanted, and I made this deal that was the most incredible deal. Even today would be a good deal. And they took it and said, okay. And here's the funny thing. I was just telling the story the other day to one of the guitar players I worked with. I said, the thing is, when I went out there, they put me in a control room. Said, we're going to give you a roll of tape with a song on it, give you 20 minutes, and just make a mix how you hear it. Well, the tape was Creedence, which is like one of my favorite bands of all time. So here I am mixing it as a demonstration to get this job at Creedence, this song. And when they came in, they said, great, when can you start?
So they just wanted to hear what you could do. And
in 20 minutes, what can you make it sound like?
Wow.
That was my final test. I mean, I already had this stuff behind me as far as management goes, and I worked with a lot of big bands, and Wally was a big band guy. The reason he really wanted me is because of my big band experience, because he figured anybody that can handle big bands can handle this other stuff. So
right. Well, who are some of the big bands that you've worked with?
Oh, when we did the jingles, my average session was 15 guys. It was big band stuff. I mean, 99% of it was big band. We had 3 trumpets or 4 trumpets and 3 or 4 bones and woodwinds and sometimes percussion. Ronnie Tuck was the drummer at that point in time. It ended up being Elvis's drummer.
Right.
He was also the lead singer of the group. Joe D was on trumpet. What's the other trumpet player's name that used to be with Glenn Miller? I can't think of his name. But no, I mean, every session had at least 8 or 10 guys.
Right.
5.
Yeah.
3-track. 3-track.
Yeah. 9
microphones. That's all we had.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people I've talked to that told me that they got started at Pepper Tanner.
Well, it was a good starting place for a lot of people. I was hired as a mail boy because I had left my job as a shipping clerk on a shipping dock and needed a job. They filled my job and I couldn't go back. And so I was hired as a mail boy, gopher, shipping clerk. So Bill Tanner needed you go get his laundry, you go get his laundry.
Right.
And Welton Jatan was chief engineer. So after about a year, maybe 8 months or a year, I said, Welton, you need to start this position in the company, and I'm the guy for it. And he said, okay, show me you can do it. And I did it. That's how I got into engineering. I've lived a charmed life. I've been a very charmed life, trying to put myself in the right place at the right time and make the right decisions. I mean, I've changed. I went to Seattle for 2 years and opened up K-Smith Studios. I walked away from the business for 2 years. I ran the record plant in Sausalito for a while. I was a client there for a while. I've done it all.
Wow. And you had fun doing it all the time, right? Wow, that's really impressive. Now, what did you do? You said that you lived in Seattle for a while?
Mm-hmm. I was recruited to come to Seattle and open up K-Smith, and Danny Kaye, the actor, was half owner, and Lester Smith. And Danny Kaye and Lester Smith owned 6 radio stations together, and they also owned Concerts West, the biggest concert promoting company in the world at that point in time. They even did like one of the Cassius Clay fights or something in Africa or something. So they recruited me. They recruited a guy from New York, a young kid from New York, and one of the top engineers out of Hyders in L.A. and me out of San Francisco. And they brought us all to Seattle. And at that point in time, I was working so many hours that I was damn near dead. I mean, I was numb. I was literally numb. And it was time to. I was going to go to Seattle to kind of relax a little bit. So that didn't work out, but that's okay. It was a good try. But we got to Seattle before the grunge stuff hit. So we got there about 8 or 10 years too early. But I mean, up there, I did some Spinner stuff. Bachman Turner Overdrive did their second and third records in my studio. I didn't do it, but one of my engineers did. I worked with Steve Miller, one of his records we did up there, most of that up there. I mixed Tower Power record up there, and we recorded another one up there. So they would even follow me up there. I was amazed. So, we had some success. Eventually, it just wasn't enough. It's too hard to go to the Northwest. It's too far away. Well, we were hoping to pull some of the Canadian stuff down from Vancouver. Like at that point in time, BTO had just had their first record. They were on, and Heart did their second record at my studio there I was running, and they were on Mushroom Records out of Vancouver, which is a small little studio. So we were pulling some of the stuff in from Canada after all.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Jim. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed this talk.
All right, buddy.